Hi, welcome to Preservation 101. My name's Debbie, and I am a summer intern with the Alliance for Historic Wyoming. And today I'm chatting with Mary Humstone.
I'm Mary Humstone, and I'm on the board of the Alliance for Historic Wyoming. I was actually a founding board member back in 2005, and I've spent my whole career working in historic preservation for the National Trust for Historic Preservation, various local organizations, and I've also taught historic preservation at the University of Wyoming in the American Studies program.
Well, Mary, I've learned a lot from you, the board members, and other members of the Alliance this summer, but I have to admit I still have a couple of questions.
Good.
Okay, so these are questions from a summer intern. I've lived in Wyoming most of my life, and I've driven around Wyoming a lot. And every time I'm on a road trip, I see these old buildings on the side of the road. So I was wondering what makes those buildings different from the buildings that deserve preservation.
So it's likely that those buildings do deserve preservation, but nobody has been motivated to preserve them.
Hmm.
But you see an old building that you're interested in, the thing that motivates people to preserve is usually a connection to the building. So it could be a personal connection, like, my grandfather built this barn, or this is the house I grew up in. It can also be a connection, something that's significant to the community, an important like school building or a library, or a building that belonged to a prominent or really well-loved community member. And then you go on the state significance, even national significance. So I think the thing that really motivates people to preserve is that significance, that connection. But you can't always tell just by looking at a building what building is significant. And a good example is Heart Mountain
Hmm.
up by Powell. That, if you just looked at this site before they had the visitor center there and everything, you'd say, well, why should we preserve these kind of rundown barracks and old buildings that don't even look like much? They don't look important. But when you research history, obviously this is terribly important, and it's very, very critical that buildings like that stay on the landscape so that people can continue to learn about what happened, that there was a Japanese American concentration camp in Wyoming during World War II. We need to know this. And so I guess I just bring that up as an example of you can't really tell by looking at a building, oh, that's just an old building, but you have to kind of look at what the history is, and some very significant buildings don't really look like much.
So,
Uh,
go ahead.
well, I was just going to say other factors that come into whether a building is preserved or not would so include the motivation of the owner, also the condition of the building. It's I think actually you could preserve any building
Hmm.
and resources to do it. There's amazing jobs that involve preservation and reconstruction, but practically speaking, the condition of the building is an issue, and then the use of the building. So if you have by the side of the road and there are no people around to use it anymore, it's very unlikely that it's going to be preserved unless it has a huge amount of significance.
So if a building does have that historical significance and it has its ties to the community, what happens if the owner of the building doesn't want it to be preserved?
Well, then it doesn't get preserved unless the owner can be persuaded to sell the building, sell the property, or and sometimes the owner is persuaded when they learn about the significance of the building, is persuaded that maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to preserve this after all.
Hmm. So it takes a little convincing.
But yeah, but there's nothing. There's rare instances in some cities across the country that have local preservation ordinances that would keep someone from tearing down a building. But
Mhm.
there's nothing that requires the property owner to preserve the building.
So do you think that out there, regardless of the owner, there might be historic locations that have been lost and might be rediscovered?
They're definitely, and I can think of one example. The state historian office recently contracted with a consultant to develop a history and historical context of the African American experience in Wyoming.
Mhm.
And the Delia Hagen uncovered a lot of places that I think most people would just as historic. They don't have any markers in front of them. There's a house in Sheridan that belonged to a prominent family, an African American community in Sheridan, and still belongs to them. But you would have no way of knowing that this particular house was significant just by looking at it. It looks like all the other houses on the block. So I think there are a lot of instances like that when you're delving into a particular kind of history or area of history that you may discover places that have just been overlooked.
So, what is the benefit for the average person when it comes to historical preservation?
So, I mean, there's a range of benefits. Just if someone has a building has, say, a personal significance to someone, then preserving that, it's kind of obvious. It's keeping any kind of family treasure. It keeps memories alive. And the same is true, really, community buildings. They help to keep community continuity and keep kind of these memories right in sight. There are also some economic benefits. For instance, our downtowns, you can just see how people are attracted to older downtowns. And if you have a business in a historic building in an older downtown, it's a real benefit to the business. And I mean, the history that they contain, the ability to attract tourists, I don't know, there's a range of benefits.
So, if I know about a particular historical building that might be in danger, maybe of falling down or being destroyed, how can I help save that building?
Well, so I would start with trying to find out as much as you can about the building, find out who owns it, talk to the owner if possible, try to find out the history so you know whether the building is significant, and check out the conditions, take some photographs. And then there are a number of organizations and agencies that can be resources to help you with preservation. So that would start on the local level if there's a historic preservation board for your city or county. They have expertise in historic preservation and can also share if you're interested in preserving it and the owner is not opposed to it, just share this with other people in the community that might be interested in getting involved. And then at the state level, there's the Alliance for Historic Wyoming. And we like to hear from people who have discovered historic buildings and they want to preserve them. And we have a whole range of expertise to help with that. And then the State Historic Preservation Office is the state agency in charge of historic preservation that can provide some assistance as well. Yeah.
So,
is there anything else about
sure.
that,
If I
about that topic?
If I wanted to get in touch with the Alliance for Historic Wyoming or maybe help them in any projects they're working on, how would I do that?
So you can just get in touch with the Alliance through our website or emailing our executive director at historicwyoming.org and just express your interest in getting involved. We have projects going on all around the state, and different kinds of projects, tours, and we're developing a watch list of historic buildings. We have a lot of research opportunities to look into the history of a building and share that information with other people. So there are lots of ways to get involved.
Thank you so much for chatting with me, Mary. I think you've answered the questions from a summer intern on historic preservation.
Thank you for being an intern with the Alliance for Historic Wyoming.